use would be Miss Brenda Leonard. She's on the platform. Thank you, Chair.
Not sure if Ms. Leonard is able to hear us, and if you can switch on also your video camera so that we see you. Okay. Ms. Leonard. Ms. Leonard, as we welcome you, you are now appearing before a subcommittee of the Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, which is set in terms of the rules of the National Assembly, and the subcommittee reports to the committee. Of course, its constitution is on the basis of the multi-party system where political parties are represented proportionally to their size as per the 2017 elections. Of course, we are a 7-member committee, subcommittee, and almost all members are on the platform. So please feel welcome. Of course, I would, without a waste of time, just to outline how we are going to engage in this conversation we're going to have with you. We usually say it's not an interview, but really a conversation so that we learn from you, and you can also learn from the questions that our members do interacting with you. So the outline of the conversation is such that we would briefly do the introduction of members. Immediately after that, we'll then start allocating the time. We'll give you 5 minutes to introduce yourself briefly, including your skills and experiences, and how, if you are considered aiming for the MDDA, what is it that you'd be able to do to assist the entity. After that 5 minutes, we'll then get to members. The members will then engage with you 5 minutes if the member has got questions to ask. That 5 minutes you'd also use to respond to the questions asked by the member. That 5 minutes. The intention is really not to get between yourself and the member so that the conversation flows. So I'll only guide as we get to the next member. That's cool. So once then the members are down, from where the chair sits, I'm a facilitator. I will only ask if there's a need to, at a point that may have been asked and not come out quite clearly. Thereafter, I will afford you 2 minutes to do your closing points, and from there, be able to wrap up the interview. So with that having been said, I will then briefly go through the intro where members will themselves, and I will start with myself, Boyce Maneli, still the chair of the committee and the chair of the subcommittee from the African National Congress. I will then allow the other members from the African National Congress first, for the MDDA and the FF, and then the IFP. Honorable.
Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, you've muted yourself, Honorable.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And then good evening. My name is Lisiba Mulala. I'm a member of the committee and also a member of this subcommittee. I'm from the African National Congress. Thanks.
Can we get the other two members, Becca and Takand?
Oh. Honorable Chair, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. No, thank you, Chair. My name is Richard Mtarani, a member of the committee and from the ANC.
That's member.
Thanks, Chair. Good evening, everybody who's in the platform. My name is Nomsa Kubega, the member of African National Congress. Thank you, Chair.
Good evening, Chairperson, Ms. Lombard. My name is Natasha Matsane. I am the DA's Shadow Minister for Communications and Digital Technologies, a member of the committee as well as the subcommittee.
Evening. My name is Naotambo. I'm a member of the subcommittee and the committee from the EFF.
Good evening, honorable members. My name is Zandile Majozi, a member of the Committee on Communications and the subcommittee, and also in the Inkatha Freedom Party. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. Now, give you an opportunity, Mr. Leonard, to briefly introduce yourself in the 5 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me say good evening, honorable members of the subcommittee. My name is Brenda Leonard. It's my surname. I've seen people sometimes confuse my surname with Lombard, but it is Leonard. I've been involved in Bush Radio for the last 30 years. I started as a volunteer and then worked in admin, and then from there worked myself up to managing director currently, or station manager. And during that time, I knew absolutely nothing about radio when I became involved in Bush Radio. And I've learned everything through courses, short courses, and through just learning from other people within Bush Radio. My interest was perked then far more than what I expected initially. And I then decided to go study communications. I did it through UNISA for the simple reason that I was working full-time and I wanted to actually get a degree in communications as well. I'm currently busy with my honors degree. I've taken a gap year this year, but hopefully I will complete it. And so on. I think there's very little in terms of the operations of community radio that I don't know or I'm not aware of. I think in terms of legislation that affects community radio and broadcasting in general, community broadcasting, I've been part of all of the development of all of that, either by making actively input or being part of broader meetings that discuss the legislation or the proposed legislation. So I have been on the board for the last 3 years, and I do feel I can make a further contribution. There's certain things that we haven't completed, one of it being the amendments to the MDDA Act, etc. So with those words, I want to again just say thank you, honourable members, for shortlisting me. Yeah, and I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. I'll now the members in the order that called on them. We would start with the Honorable Kubeka, if she's got the question to pose. Will then be followed by Honorable Masoni. Will then be followed by Honorable Mutakane. We then have Honorable Machozi, Honorable Tambo, and Honorable. I just give the opportunity to Honorable Kubeka if she's got a question to pose. Honorable Kubeka.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Good evening, Ms. Leonard.
Evening.
How are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm good. And also it's happy to see you again because I'm fully much aware to say even in last time you were serving the MDDA board. So I'm happy, I know, and as you are presenting, for I can say maybe also on our side, that's what you are encouraging us on the issue. Also of studying as you are presenting yourself to say even you manage to take just a gap year in order to focus on your work, as we know that you were performing very well on the side of MDDA. I know you. Miss Leonard, it's only one question that I have for you. Can I just want to know what part actually can you bring in the MDDA board to make an MDDA to be successful or on what it wants to deliver actually for the community? Thank you, Ms. Leonard.
Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. Just in terms of what I bring my community media experience. I've been in print, I've been in radio for the longest time, and I was part of initiating Cape Town TV as well. So for me, I'm passionate about community media. I am an ambassador for community media, and because I work in community media, I understand the challenges that faces community media as well. And I think that experience I do bring into the MDDA. I think just as a previous board member, because I'm passionate about community media, I'm one of those members that ensure that I read all documents, even if it's 1,000 pages, at least 3 times, so that I'm completely prepared for meetings, so that I make the best contribution as a board member. And that's also something that I brought. People would always say that sometimes they miss something, I would be the person that pick it up. And for me, it's not because I'm nitpicking, but because I want, as a former board member, I wanted to make the best contribution I can and apply my mind so that I understand the issues that's put on paper. When we go to the board meeting, I can then fight, if needs be, fight for the issue so that it benefit community media. And I think that's what I bring.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard, but also on the side maybe of working relations with your other colleagues. How do you take it when you are having maybe on the side of a pressure in order just to work with them to assist one another in whatever that you are bringing it on the side of the board?
Yeah, I do believe the board should operate as a collective. And I believe the board that I was a part of operated as a collective. And collectively, when you look at the board and the skills that each person brings, it actually forms a full on cake. because some people were very strong in governance, some people were strong in NPO governance and disability, persons with disabilities. Others were very strong in understanding the public finance. And I came with the community media experience, as well as a little bit of governance and finance. So I think as a collective, as a cake, a full-on collective, each person brought a strength to the board. And that's what I want to contribute again.
Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. And I will recognize Honorable Mazone.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Ms. Leonard, please accept my apology. I referred to you as Ms. Lombard when I introduced myself. I do apologize as someone whose surname is always mispronounced myself. I know the irritation, so do accept my apology. I'd like to start out by saying I'm a very big fan of community radio and community media in general. And I think it forms a very important part of the South Africa media circuit. Especially in our more rural areas, I think it is essential that truth, independent and fair media is brought out through community radio and print media as much as possible. But I do have certain concerns about the MDDA, one of which is that key targets were simply not met. Now, you have been a member of the board for 3 years before this particular application and shortlisting again. So you would know better than most where the problems lie. Now, I'm not interested in problems. I'm interested in solutions. Going forward, if you were to be successful once again and you would sit on the MDDA board yet again, what would be your inputs and your solutions? For example, you mentioned that one of the key target areas missed by the MDDA is the required amendments to the bill. What would you say are the reasons the KPIs have not been met? And how do we ensure that this collective cake, as you refer to it colloquially, ensures that the basic KPIs of the MDDA are met going forward, ensuring that there's no fruitless and wasteful expenditure? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mazzoni. I think just to answer why the KPIs weren't met, especially in the last financial year, there was a time of instability in the staff. And I won't go into the details of that. I'm sure that you are aware of that. Currently, there is an acting CEO as appointed by the board that is doing very well. The CFO that was absent most of the financial year has been appointed as well. And there's still key executive management positions that need to be filled. And I think that process is ongoing. So just in terms of the last financial year where the KPIs weren't met, it was due to some instability at staff level, including executive management level. And those issues have been dealt with. I know the CEO position has been advertised. While I was there, we did a first round of interviews. We didn't find the right person, and a second round has been done, advertising has been done, and that's when I left. So I assume that process is ongoing. For me, I think the MDDA did and is doing well. You have passionate staff, etc. But the MDDA amendments to the MDDA bill, there has been a process internal, but that process is also out of our hands in some, or it was out of our hands in some way, because the process is it's dealt with by another entity. So we could make input as much as we can, and from there, we had to have talks on that. Personally, in terms of KPIs, I think definitely the MDDA Act should be, the amendments to that should be prioritized for this financial year. And with the stability in the organization, I believe the KPIs will go up back to 80, 90, and 95%, hopefully 100% over the next 2 years. That's okay. I'll stop there. Sorry.
Thank you, Honorable Mazone. I will now recognize the Honorable Takane, if he's got questions to pose.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And thank you, Ms. Brenda, for availing yourself to be engaging with us, and then given the fact that you were part of the board for 3 years. I want just to raise 2 areas that I think to me would be very important. Firstly, what new ideas will you introduce if you are appointed? Because the society is progressing, the information age is upon us. What new really now, having been there for 3 years, what are new ideas that you may introduce to ensure that the MDDA perform at the highest level? Because given your experience of 3 years, surely there are a lot of things, even if you are not there, at least for sabbatical leave, but generally you got more ideas on what you can do in a practical sense to ensure that the community radios, also the community broadly, is informed with correct information, because you're in the age now of misinformation and disinformation. And then I think then you know better, because you've been in radio for many years, you'll be able then to be able to dissect this and assist us to say, this is what you can do if, of course, you got appointed to sit again in the board. I wanted to raise that point first, because I think introducing new approaches will be very important for us as a committee, but also broadly as community on that. That's a question first that I wanted to raise, Chair, for her to assist me also to address some of the issues that I'm raising.
Thank you, Honorable Madakani. I think, firstly, what you said in terms of how news and media is not only produced, but how it's consumed has changed a lot. And for MDDA and community media to be relevant, they need to move with the times. They need to move and introduce different forms and producing content on multi-platforms. So for me, the first thing would be to prepare the community media sector for that reality. That would be the first thing. So with training and financial support, which is currently to a limited extent allowed in the MDDA Act, but that would then assist. Secondly, in terms of news, for instance, young people do not consume news in traditional radio, whether it's community radio or whether it's commercial radio. They don't consume news there. So community media and radio need to adapt to consume, so that they actually produce content and news for the youth. Because there's a huge gap at the moment, and I think MDDA can play a role in terms of that. The one thing that MDDA did while I was there was, for instance, the sustainability model for community media. I think that needs to be reviewed and it needs to be implemented so that we can look at the long-term sustainability of community media. So In summary, I just want to say digitization is the future, and I don't think community media is prepared for that digitization. And we're not talking having a website and 5 gigs for website as an example. It's impossible. You have a static website. People want news on the hour, on the minute sometimes. And community media need to understand that and transform to accommodate that. That's the one. The other thing is, I think with the elections next year, community media has an important role to play in civic education, in ensuring that people understand, that voters understand not only how government structures work, how they can make input, but also why it's important for them to vote. So for me, MDDA, I think for the next year should focus on getting community media ready to do civic education. We should have done it, I think, a year ago. But if that can be done and started at the beginning of the year with civic education across platforms, so radio, print, and community TV, that will be an important push for our democracy. Because lastly, my last point is that I think community media, with its listeners, with its audience, as well as with its connection and trust that has been built with communities, have an important role to play in ensuring and strengthening our democracy.
Thank you, Honorable Ntakane, for the questions posed. We'll now move to Honorable Machozi. Honorable Machozi.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to all honorable members, and also good evening to Ms. Leonard. Mine is only one question, Chair. I would want to pick your mind on, I heard you speaking about management and also the board, that there's a CEO and also so there's stability within. Let's take a scenario. If you become a board member, let's take a scenario now that there's a conflict between management and the board. How will you try to mitigate into making sure that whatever conflicts that are there do not affect radio stations, and maybe making sure that you carry out your mandate, and also making sure that the board also does what it's supposed to do, and the conflict does not affect communities. I just wanted to pick your mind on that, because I heard you that you have been involved more on radio, and sometimes these radio stations die because of the management is not it's not in an understanding with the board and so forth. So I just want to pick your mind. How will you be able to resolve that conflict and making sure that it does not affect communities in rendering the mandate that you are given? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Majosi. I just wanted to clarify, are you asking the question at the station level or at MDDA level? Because I didn't catch that.
MDDA level.
Okay.
MDDA level, but it does not then affect what you are mandated to do in these local radio stations.
I think the first thing is both the board and the executive management need to understand their roles. And that happens through training. Like when new board members come on board, as well as old maybe board members that are there currently, they should be trained in understanding their role. Where do you draw the line in the sand kind of thing, so that the board doesn't exceeds its power, and what is the responsibility of the executive management. So that clarity must be there, firstly. I think secondly, in MDDA's case currently, there's a contract between the CEO and the board chairperson. outlining their roles and responsibilities, because ultimately the CEO would report to the board. And I think one of the things that will be very clear in terms of the board's role is that the board is not operational. It should not, it deals with the CEO and the executive management to some extent because they attend meetings. But beyond that, the board shouldn't be calling staff and asking why are you not doing your responsibility or whatever they want to do, engage them at any level. The relationship should be very clear. It's between the board and the CEO, and that's where it stops. If the board's not happy with what's happening, then the CEO should account for that. So I think that those roles and responsibilities must be clear. I think the other role of the board is to ensure that we have an operational organization where people understand their roles and responsibilities, just generally, so that we have a smooth running organization. So for me, that would be where we draw the line in terms of operations and the board's responsibility, which is the last thing I do want to say in terms of this. I think there need to be a place besides strategic planning, maybe a team building exercise once a new board comes in, so that the board can connect with the executive management, so that they sort of, and it can be in the form of a meeting and maybe some other activities, so that you can sort of find a common ground and understand, okay, this is your expectations of me, this is my expectations of you, and this is how we're going to operate in future. I think that was sort of lacking when we came on board, because we were 4 new board members that came on board, and we had our orientation and then went for training a year into being on the board, whereas that should be one of the first things that actually happens, that training takes place, besides the orientation, and then followed by a team building exercise between the board and the executive management, because then hopefully that will lead to a smooth transition with new board members coming on, but also a smooth operation of the organization.
Thank you, Honorable Machozi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. I now recognize Honorable Tambo.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm happy. The candidate has responded to what I wanted to ask. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Tambo. And I recognize Honorable Mlala.
Yeah, thanks, Chairperson. I just have 2 questions. And good evening, Ms. Brandon.
Good evening.
Yeah, I want you to just to, because if you are appointed in the board, you might need to indicate the role and impact of over-the-top players in the industry in relation to the community radio media. And maybe also there's also an issue of how can the programming for community media be improved so that it can respond to the objectives of media diversity in our country, particularly in local areas, because it might be local but also diverse. Those are just my 2 questions, ma'am. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Malala. I think just in terms of programming, I'll start with the second question, and diversity, ensuring that there's diversity. I think diversity can be in the voices that you hear. So in the languages that you hear, ensuring that you have both male and female voices, as well as voices of the LGBTIQ So those are the voices, the languages. Obviously, you have the languages dealing with local languages, the local cultures, etc. So it's important to ensure diversity that reflects back from the community, if that makes sense. Because ultimately, if you look at the regulations for community broadcasters, your first
Honorable
Mulala, mute so that you allow the candidate to conclude on responding to questions. Let's mute.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. No, what I was saying in diversity, in terms of the CASA regulation, you have a target audience, a footprint for the station. So the station needs to ensure that the diversity that is found in that footprint are prioritized for the station. And that is through the voices that you hear on air, that is through the languages that you hear, the cultural discussion, the music. Those are all issues that reflect the diversity. But I think besides, when we look at the community, we shouldn't only look, okay, we speak Venda and Xhosa as an example, and English in this community, because there's other people living in that community, maybe that speaks Swahili as an example. So that must be looked at. They form part of the community, and their cultures, their music, their language, their voices should be reflected in the station, in the operations of the station. I think the challenge sometimes comes when stations are, like the management of stations, are of a particular view and they support a particular view, and then sort of becomes a gatekeeper for other people to come into the station. And the way you can address that is through policy within the station, and the board of that station must monitor the implementation of that policy, as well as when they meet to get reports and see and actually do that diversity check to ensure that it is reflected. The second question, or the first question you asked about the role of other players in terms of community media. I think the most important player or contributor is the community. If a station do programming that doesn't talk to the needs of the community, that doesn't reflect the languages, the music, any of that, in communities don't tune in. So, and including the news. So that is, for me, always coming from a community radio station, the community is the important player in a community station. Then you have other players, you have churches that wants to influence or religious institutions that want to influence. You have your sports bodies, etc., all the sectors of society. And then you have government stakeholders, such as GCIS, for instance, that do speak to different government entities that produces content. I think the challenges in terms of other stakeholders, especially outside stakeholders, is they sometimes want to hold advertising and hold the station at ransom, in a sense, by saying that we're giving you this, so you must do this. And that happens from time to time. So I think that is the one challenge that stations have to deal with. And sometimes the reality is currently with broadcasters and community media in general, have a huge challenge with sustainability, financial sustainability. So you have, for instance, these advertising agencies that want to come to stations and say that they put huge expectations on the station. They will say, we give you 3,000 Rand, we want you to run this thing for 2 weeks, which is just not possible. And the reality is most stations will take it for the simple reason that it's funds that comes in and they're struggling to cover the bills at the end of the month. So I have that as well.
Thank you, Honorable Mlala. Maybe just a few things, Leonard, just to be sure that I heard you well. Because you are a former board member, so it will be a bit different from somebody who's not seen there. And I think for us to learn for the future, surely as you sit back now, you do make reflections and say probably this could have been done better. What is that thing could have been done better? And I think I'm lifting up the point you raised under Honorable Kubeka, but also the response you had on KPAs not met. And the Auditor General would say the lack of skills or the flight of skills there is the reason there's a regression from where you took the MDDA from. So making then those reflections outside of the environment, what is one or two things that you'd say, look, on hindsight, would have learned from this and to improve? Maybe this is something to look at without undermining the other points you've already made about team building and so on. So that even the new recruits, at least we know that that stability would be there going forward. So that will be one, I think one point there. The second point is that you are raising the point of being a managing director in a community radio station. But again, there it's an issue of what would be possible conflict of interest gets to be managed, given that the MDDA has also the responsibility of resourcing or helping with capacity building to sustain those community radio stations. So I'm just saying, if you can say that from a point of probably it may be advantageous, but you may also put that same station at a disadvantage. So how are you managing that conflict? Those are the 2 points that I should raise just to clear my points. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Boyce. I was smiling when you mentioned the conflict of interest, and it's not because I found it funny, but that was actually one of the points I was going to raise as well in terms of what can be done better. I think when I came on the board, the chairperson at that time actually asked I think the company secretary to find a lawyer to do a review of a potential conflict of interest in terms of me being on the board. And that was done, I think, at the beginning of my term. And to be honest, I didn't know about it, and I read about it 6 months later in one of the reports. So for me, that would be something that could have been done better. I had no problems with the legal opinion on whether there's a conflict of interest or not, and how do you navigate that conflict of interest. I had no problems with that. But I did have a problem, and I raised it in the board and with the chairperson, was that I wasn't told about it. So it was sort of done in the dark. And I think that's one thing that could have been done completely better. Upfront, in terms of relations on the board, upfront say, listen, we might have a conflict of interest. Let's get a legal opinion. And then that's done. So for me, that was the one thing. Then secondly, and I wrote this in my exit report to the board actually, When we came there, we were about a year into our position. I served on the Corporate Affairs Committee, and the Portfolio Committee then sent a whistleblowers report, which apparently it has been there previously in 2019. So the CAC were asked to investigate that. I think maybe for the initial discussion, we should have done that. But in my opinion, in hindsight, taking the experience, I think that should have been done by either an independent person, or it should have been handled differently. So if there's two things I can change or would like to change, those would be the two things, definitely.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. As I promised, I would get back to you and give you 2 minutes to make your concluding points to the committee before the.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I think just in conclusion, I want to say that just reviewing the MDDA Act, it was clear that 3 years was not sufficient. I think the first year you find your feet in the board, and then really the next 2 years you have time. The time flies really. Just in terms of my contribution, I would like to see some of the things that we've actually put in place, some of the actions, the stabilizing of the organization, the sustainability, research and its implementation, the MDDA Act. I would like to see that through, would like to ask the support so that I can serve on the MDDA board for a further 3 years and see that process through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. I really hope that indeed the objectives would have been met, which is that of learning from the responses that we've made, as well as you learning from questions as asked by members. From where we are, they go beyond just the short interaction we've had with you. But it should help us to also improve the work we do as the committee that does oversight over the entity. Of course, just to deal with the formalities, on the part of you understanding where the committee goes, the process, as you know, our processes are open to the public, so we'll be able to follow until the last commendation the committee is made to the House. But at administrative level, if there are administrative questions you still want to follow up on, you will work through the committee support as you did, as you were preparing for this interaction we've had with you today. With that, we really thank you for still raising up your hand and say, I would want to be part of the conversation, finding solutions to challenges that the country is facing, community broadcasting being one of those that are really quite critical in ensuring that that diversity is not compromised, that you can hear a plurality of voices out there. So with that, we really thank you for coming before the committee. So would be allowing Stengoma to bring the other candidates, would be free to release you in your busy evening, whatever it's left of it as you prepare for tomorrow. Please accept that we really are grateful that you also shared what you said, especially being a former board, so we're bringing that experience from a practical point of view. Thanks.
Thank you very much and good night.
Right. Mr. Ngoma.
Good evening, Chair. The last candidate for the evening would be Mr. Mbasa Metuse. He is on the platform. He just got connected. Mr. Mbasa Metuse, he will be our last candidate for today. Chairperson, thank you very much.
I like the emphasis for today. Otherwise, we are so shall go tomorrow. Mr. Metuse, are you able to hear?
Good evening, Chair. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we can also hear and see.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see it, and we can hear you clearly. Right. Thank you. So let me take the opportunity to welcome you. You are appearing before a subcommittee of the Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies in the National Assembly. In terms of the rules of the National Assembly, the committee can create a subcommittee, a particular focus, and report back to the committee. So ours is really to look at the filling of the vacancies in the MDDA, for which you have been shortlisted for. So that's who we are. The committee is, of course, constituted in line with the multi-party democracy we have, where you have parties proportional the electoral support to sit to the 2019 elections, to have constituted the 7-member committee that we have. Just to deal with the formalities of how the outline of the conversation would be, and we're calling it a conversation, not emphasizing the interview, because we want you to feel free to engage with the committee in a way that we can learn from that engagement, whether it's questions from members or the responses that you would give, so that beyond this interaction, that should be also useful in also enhancing the work that we do oversight on the entity. So we'd then deal with the brief introduction of members. After that, then we'll start allocating the time. We'll give you 5 minutes to briefly introduce yourself, which will take into account the skills, experiences, and how that would help if you were to be considered for recommendation in the MDDA. After that 5 minutes, we'll then go to members in the order to call the members. We'll have 5 minutes per member, which takes into account the questions and your responses to those questions that the member would have posed. For us to allow the flow of the engagement, I would not come in between as the chair, but allow the interaction to continue. I will only guide as we get to the next member who will be posing questions. Once the members are done, from where I'm sitting as the chair, I'm just facilitating. I will only ask if there's a need to, just to lift maybe 1 or 2 points that would have been raised by members for better clarity. Thereafter, I would then come back to you and give you another 2 minutes for you to make your concluding points, including if you have got any clarities that you want from the committee. And from that point, we will then wrap up the engagement with you. I hope that is clear on your side.
Yes, Honorable Chair. It's clear.
All right. So I'll then start with the intro, of course, starting with the African National Congress, followed by the DA, then the EFF, as well as IFP representatives here, starting with myself, Boyce Maneli. I'm the chairperson of the committee and the chairperson of the subcommittee from the African National Congress. So I'll just go to African National Congress now.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My name is Lisiba Mulala. I'm the member of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. I'm also a member of this subcommittee. I'm from the African National Congress. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairperson. My name is Richard Mtarane, a member of the committee. I'm from the African National Congress. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Nomsa Kubega, the member of this subcommittee that is welcoming you today, and also a member of African National Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Good evening, Chairperson. Good evening, sir. My name is Natasha Matsane. I'm the DA Shadow Minister for Communications and Digital Technologies. I'm a member of the subcommittee, and you are most welcome here with us tonight.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Okay, good evening, honorable members. Good evening, Mr. Mbasa. This is Zandile Majozi, a member of the Committee on Communications and also a member of the subcommittee for Minkata Freedom Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Seem to have lost Honorable Tambu.
Yes,
that was here.
yes, Chair, it is off the platform.
Yes, so if he reconnects, we'll allow him to introduce himself, probably if he also has got a question to ask. But we do have the numbers to proceed in any way. So we'll now give you an opportunity, like I said, the 5 minutes to briefly introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't really waste your time. I do understand that you have my CV with you. My name is Mbasa Metuse. I originally from the Eastern Cape, East London, but came to Gauteng more than 22 years ago. I've worked for the public sector organizations. I've also I also got into a business as I am now. I am a businessman. I've been serving on a number of state-owned entities as a director or a board member. So I went to a couple of institutions of higher learning, including University of Fort Hare, University of Stellenbosch Business School, University of Witwatersrand, Wits. I also went to IODSA, enrolled with IODSA to pursue a program called Chartered Director Designation. Yes, in short, that's me. So I'm currently serving on a couple of organizations, not many though. As I said earlier on, of course, I've been around as a director, a member of the board. especially in the public sector. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now go to members. Like I said, it's 5 minutes for questions and your responses, and that I would not come in between so as to allow the flow of the conversation. I would then start with the Honorable Kubeka, who will then be followed by Honorable Mazone, Honorable Dakane, then will be followed by Honorable Machozi. Like I said, if Honorable Tambo is back, you then still have an opportunity after Honorable Machozi. Then we take Honorable Lal as the last member to interact. The Honorable Kubeka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, Mr. Mbasa.
Evening, Honorable Member, Honorable Kubeka.
How are you?
I'm fine, madam. How are you?
I'm okay. Thanks very much. Mr. Mbasa, as you are presenting, telling us who you are, what are you having, can you just briefly maybe tell me to say with that experience and also with the skills that you are having, what can you bring actually for the MDDA in order to assist the MDDA to grow? And also, I'm happy to hear that you are on the side of business also. Can you also maybe just tell us, because on the side of MDDA, especially when coming to the side of the budget, you can see that the MDDA is not having so much. I can say it's limping. What also can you convince us to bring the skills that can make the MDDA better also, maybe in order to uplift on the issue of the budget also? Thank you, Mr. Mbasa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Firstly, I must say from the onset that I come to the organization as if I happen to be appointed to form part of the existing, I suppose, accounting authorities, the board, which is entrusted with the overall governance authority and responsibility, including oversight of that organization. And probably the limitation would be that I'm not part of the day-to-day operations of the organization. However, the nice experience always is that of two sides of professionals coming together, working together towards achieving the goals as attached to the mandate of that organization. Obviously, with experience, exposure, one would be in a position to make some of the contributions that may be relatively measured on how best we can improve from the current state where the MDDA is faced with the challenge of having insufficient resources to finance the community broadcasters and commercial broadcasters that are looking at it for their operations and everything. So obviously one would not assume that certain strategies have not been explored. I've noted, for instance, that there is a fundraising strategy in place, which I'm interested to understand its contents or what is contained in that strategy, and to what extent has it attempted to help the organization. So I'm of the view that I will make a couple of suggestions, especially maybe I can just at a high level talk to some of the things that, as I was thinking, wild, that maybe you may have to reconsider the funding a framework where MDDA may have to work on a very solid fundraising strategy that will attract not many donations, not many organizations, but few big conglomerates which may take an interest on issues such as health, education, transformation, and so on, and probably allow them to even place their adverts free, and allow them agree on a certain amount that they may have to pledge, which I would call probably angel funders, which if they give the amount, let me make an example, they give SAB, for instance, give an amount of 10 million or 20 million to MDDA, which is possible, with a convincing proposal. Their content can find expression to all these broadcasting, community broadcasting, not necessarily to compete with the national broadcasters such as SABC and other big broadcasters, but to say it is always possible for the smaller community broadcasters to also provide a platform that can be beneficial to the same businesses that are looking forward to those kind of platforms, especially if they have that access in terms of platform across the country, across the board, without serious restrictions that may be currently, by the way, presented by the current legislation.
Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. Honorable Kubeka.
No, I was saying
yes,
very much for the responses that I've received.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Kubeka. I now recognize the Honorable Manzone.
Thank you, Chairperson. So it's a pleasure to have you with us tonight, and I'm sure it's for you. It must be quite a daunting experience to have to sit before a group of MPs and basically discuss what went wrong and how you foresee what went right and how you foresee the future of the MDDA should you be a successful candidate. Now, there's no doubt, looking at your CV, your experience is extensive. I see from sitting on numerous boards, various universities, councils, you're clearly, I mean, there's no question about your qualifications. But there's also a question of overstretch and how much one person can handle. So my first part of the question would be, given the difficulties that we know the MDDA has faced and is facing, do you think that you have sufficient time to dedicate yourself fully to the MDDA board? I did notice that you're studying towards the Chartered Accountancy Board, and I can only imagine how, well, I know from friends how very difficult that is. And I think it's exemplary that you're doing that. But the MDDA, to a certain degree, is in quite a bit of trouble, and it's failed to meet many of its KPIs. Now, I wonder if you could comment, because I'm sure you've had extensive looks now at the annual reports, previous annual reports, and the annual state of affairs as is placed on the MDDA website. In your opinion, what do you think the purpose of the MDDA is? Should the MDDA exist, or should we be looking at collaborating or joining certain of the entities together to avoid situations of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and also to the benefit of the public, to ensure that these institutions which guide our communications and digital technology realm actually meet their KPIs and meet the targets that are set for them, and they don't set themselves up for failure? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I hope that I've captured all the elements contained in your question. Firstly, let me say that I'm currently serving in 3 boards. Some of the boards reflecting in the CV are previous boards. I'm not currently serving in some. And I do understand that, I do know that even with the ones that I'm part of, there are also some towards the end, because their term are coming to an end. So I don't really anticipate a challenge of coping or inability to cope with the work of MDDA. I'm also doing chartered director, as I was saying. I enrolled for chartered directorship, which is not really chartered accounting, which I think is more extensive. So yes, I had a look. I went through the latest annual report in the website. I could see was 2021-2022, which I looked at their APP, and I must say that the performance is not bad at all. Actually, they've done very well. If I would be precise, I think they achieved 95 of their targets from their annual from their APP. So I don't really think it's bad, but I also looked at it's not necessarily in their cases, unlike other organizations like Centec, it's not like they have necessarily financial targets other than revenue collection targets. they've done very well even there, with a shortfall of, I think, of 7 point something million. So if we are to rely to the report as presented in the website, one would not really be that worried about the performance of the organization at the moment, except that one would say the organization and the leadership of the organization in its current form, and at the moment I of the view that they are ticking all the boxes except the financial sustainability indicator, which is not necessarily their failure. It is the issue of the physical challenges we all aware as a country of. So I think that the focus should be more on strengthening that component, paying more attention. I'm raising this because as I look in their annual report, I come to realize that over 20 years, they managed to, 19 to 20 years, they managed to fund projects of around 512, which I think is a huge milestone. And of course, I understand that at some point there was also some scheme from the department which stopped, I think, around 2016. Of course, it had also contributed negatively. It had a negative effect in the running of community broadcasters, as it left some of them unable to pay for the broadcasting for Centec. So obviously there is that challenge. However, one would not really say that MDDA is one of those sinking ships that may be regarded as liability entities that the state may have to reconsider their existence. And so I would really, yeah, that's my understanding so far with the information, especially when I looked at their performance information report. I was convinced that at an operational level, the executive, together with its governance structure, which is the accounting authority, I think they are doing very well, except that they have to do more on fundraising. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Manzone. Now, the Honorable Mkatana.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I want just to put a small question. Mr. Matus, you may answer it or not. But what motivated you to apply to become part of this board? Surely you are a very busy person. You are working very hard. You are doing a lot of things for the improvement of your own situation. But what motivated you to apply? Given the fact that also we have read the performance of the board, the key performance areas, what are the new ideas that you will want to introduce if you get appointed or if you are given a privilege to sit in this board? Those are two questions that I wanted you just to comment on them. And then broadly, I think we have covered some of the issues that I wanted to raise. how do you see the future of the MDDA, given the fact that we are in the information age and then for the information revolution? But how do you see the future of the MDDA? Not in terms of resources, but in terms of ideas and then the culture that you want to build in other areas that are very important for any performing organization. That's what I wanted just to raise and just to find out what you can do to assist us on that, if, of course, you get appointed.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Itakane. So I must say that I normally take an interest to public entities or state-owned entities and enterprises to volunteer my expertise. So I don't apply because, one, I think that there's not enough capacity in that organization. But I'm one person who believes that we all have a contribution to make. So I must say that from the onset that I'm not a person with a journalism background and all that and so on. My passion is more on corporate governance. This is very close to my heart. And I'm quite convinced that when we strengthen corporate governance systems in any organization, we are bound to succeed. When we have a strong oversight function in the form of the board and other and the audit committee and so on, you are bound to produce or yield positive results as an organization. But also, of course, through experience and exposure, as I said earlier on, I do know that we come together as professionals with different ideas and similar ideas and experiences, which we combine them together and produce something tangible that may take us to another step. So that motivates me to sit in a board, especially when I get to an organization or in an environment and I found that you have the most qualified and experienced professionals from both sides. It becomes more interesting because you have more robust conversations with more measured inputs with different experiences. So of course, I do believe that as one gets involved in an organization and get more insights of what is happening in the organization, because it's something else to make bold statements and claim to be a messiah of everything, that I can solve this and that, while you do not really have a sense of that environment in terms of what are the challenges and how best we can respond collectively as the leadership of that organization to overcome those. So I'm always optimistic and positive that working together, using our experiences, our expertise, and so on, we can take an organization from a backyard to somewhere else. I don't envisage a bleak future for MDDA. As I said earlier on, that when I looked at their latest report, especially the performance information report, I was quite convinced that people are working hard. People are working hard. And of course, it is quite clear. I've also had the privilege of being a director at Centec. I'm quite aware of MDDA or community broadcasters' inability to pay their dues and understanding the issues of incapacity and those issues also triggered interest in myself, because we have had a number of conversations and discussions internally at Centec on how probably a situation can be changed at MDDA, or how MDDA can manage the issues of the debt differently and so on. So I may not really get into those nitty-gritties. I'm not really at liberty to speak on behalf of the other organization. But as I say, I do have at least an idea of the challenges, especially when it comes to sustainability of the project of the media development and diversity. That the gains that may have been achieved over 20 years can easily be undermined if we cannot think outside the box and have a more practical ideas and interventions. For instance, one of the things I was just thinking loudly, Chair, is that okay, yes. So as you look at, for instance, the issues of licensing, I get a sense that approval of licenses to same territories may add up to the same problem that we are currently facing, without undermining the fundamental constitutional and legislative fundamentals of why must we have this project of diversification and media development.
Well, thank you, Honorable Ntaka. We'll now call upon Honorable Machozi and now identify and recognize to speak.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening to Mr. Mbasa. And mine would be in terms of if you are appointed to be a board member, how will you then be able to distinguish between an oversight that will be playing and not interfering with the administration that will be there at that time? I hear your background and experience, and maybe you would want to go overboard. Will you find yourself there, or do you have what do the principles that you'll be taking to the MDDA and making sure that all other board members do not cross that line? So I want to hear from you, what expertise will you be bringing in terms of resolving conflicts and making sure that you don't interfere with the administration? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member. I think the issue of interference or the interface between the executive and the board is always open for interpretation, and at times it can be misconstrued. And so it's a tricky one in a sense, because the board is assigned with an overall authority of the organization. It must take or account for everything that happens in the organization, in an organization. So the executive is expected to implement everything that which is agreed upon by the board, especially the strategy, which is the board strategy, and the board remains the custodian of that strategy. I normally say that being operational in a literal sense means that from where I'm sitting, you move from your house, you go to the offices of MDDA and get yourself an office and a computer and type something and write a submission and do the work that is supposed to be done by the managers in that organization. That is being operational. But to take an interest in what is happening in an organization, including, it may sound a very problematic example, including an appointment of a clerk or a general worker in an institution, it remains the business of the accounting authority. It may be a function that has been delegated to managers below the CEO. However, if, for instance, in an organization, corruption happens, people are appointing their friends, their cousins and all that, and there are challenges in an organization, there's an implosion. A board has to take responsibility. Now, I normally say, what can only make the board to be effective in discharging its oversight responsibilities is access to information. You may give the board a high-level strategic reports to apply themselves in their decision-making. However, if the board is not privy to the details of what is happening in the organization, it is likely to arrive at wrong decisions. And an organization can easily collapse because the board is passive, does not pay attention to detail and question. I'm raising this because normally issues of interference and overreach, they come to play when people are made to account. Of course, in other instances, you have a caliber of board members who are so amateuristic such that they don't understand that the same professionals in the form of executives, starting from the CEO, are qualified executives, are qualified adults who know what they do, who rather require your support. However, in the process, yours is to ensure that whatever that is done is complied with the legislative framework and the policy framework in which that organization exists with it. So that's how I would answer that question. I will never be confused in terms of where do we sit as the board, what is your responsibility as a manager, and what do we expect from you? And unapologetic, let me be honest, I began unapologetic when it comes to exercising oversight. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Machos. May I just check if Honorable Tambo has been able to get back? So if not, we get to the Honorable Mlala.
Thanks, Chairperson, and good evening to everyone in the platform. Maybe I should start with one simple questions. Do you believe that traditional media still has a role to play in the current media trajectory? I'm raising this question in relation to the profit-making schemes, the huge political interest in the media, business interest, and the poor community radio station needs to survive under the environment. So I'm putting that in the same context that, in your view, do we still need this traditional media? And if so, why? And where do you think we can improve? And maybe the last question, it's more personal. If I may ask you, where you're staying or where you come from, how many community radio stations do you have? Are you listening to them? And what would be your proposal? Because the market is so saturated with modern technologies, but there's still other innovative ways that you can propose at the local level that can help the community radio station to sustain itself. Maybe if you can speak to these two issues, I'll be fine. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Molala. Let me first make a disclaimer that as I attempt to answer that question, you must accept that it will be coming from someone very close to a layman, not really a media person. However, from a sustainability point of view, one may attempt to answer the question. I don't see anything wrong with the coexistence of traditional media and new innovations, including ensuring that which would be my advice, that the community broadcasters should start considering use digital, focusing on digitization. In simple terms, saying, for instance, I come from the Eastern Cape, it's more than 20-something years ago. And you may find that I've never listened much to other community radios. Probably I don't even know now. And if I would have had an interest to listen to some of their programs, if you were to digitize these broadcasters, it means you may have an access through your device, a phone, while you are in Northwest, while you are in Joburg, anywhere in the country. You want to listen to a program somewhere in Zanin, still have access, irrespective. So for me, I think I don't have a problem with the coexistence of both. Look, I'll be honest with you, Honorable Molala. For me, it's the question of finding the best working model. One thing you cannot do away is business interest that will always look for opportunities. Now, from where I'm sitting, I always of the view that you must always work out a model that you are quite convinced that is going to be mutually beneficial. Use your legislation and as a weapon to protect and making sure that these interests are balanced. I believe in that. I believe in inclusive growth and all that. I'm not a person who believes in rigid ideologies. I don't believe that there's only one way of doing things. I'm quite practical. I'm very practical in my approach on everything, and pragmatic, without necessarily without being blind to the interest of our people, which we are here to serve. But we must always ask ourselves, must this organization collapse? because we are afraid of having a partner or possible partnerships with other stakeholders coming from the business side and so on. I hope I've attempted to answer your questions. Sorry, with the radios, I'll be honest with you, including with TV. I'm sorry to say that in public. I'm very pathetic. I normally tell people I don't know how many TVs I have, but I don't even watch TV. Yes, so I don't know how many radio stations that are more functional and so on. I'm being honest. Thank you. You are muted, Chair.
Yes, I think something is problematic with the gadget. Thank you, Honorable Mlala, for the questions. It seems we still do not have Honorable Tambo, so with that, it means we would have completed members who would have asked questions. I would not ask the question I wanted to ask on the experience you are bringing from Centec that deals with signal distribution, because you have already indicated that you would not want to speak on behalf of that organization. Good. So I will then come back to you for the 2 minutes that we said we'd give to you to make your concluding points, including clarities you may need from the committee. Over to you, Mr.
No, I don't think I have any, Chair. Yeah, safe to say that obviously I'm not used to sitting in interviews and be interviewed. In most instances, I'm always on the other side. I'm always chairing interviews. So yeah, so I know that I will never be good in doing what I'm doing now. Yeah, so
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Mr. Mbasa-Mthuse. Like I said, we'll then wrap up after giving you an opportunity to make your concluding remarks. Surely the objective set would have been reached, that of learning from the responses that you give, but also self-learning from the questions that members would have posed. And it therefore says that the conversation continues outside of the limited time that we had as we seek to find solutions as South Africans, in particular ensuring that the MDDA would have been established for, at the end it's realized, ensuring that diversity as well as the many voices that you need to hear on the ground. So I'm saying, I think we have reached that in the engagement we've had with you. But let me then just deal with the formalities. That in as far as the committee process is concerned, we are conducting our meetings in a way that's open to the public, which is part of the public participation process in the work of Parliament and its committees. So you'll be able to follow the proceedings until the actual recommendation is presented to the House for consideration. And therefore, there's nothing hidden in that scope. As it relates to the administrative part, if there are questions that you would want to follow up on administratively, Mr. Ngoma and the team that worked with you as you were preparing to appear before the subcommittee, you are still free to interact with them for any follow-ups you would want to make. Otherwise, we should really thank you for raising the hand, part of the conversation, and given that opportunity, the committee should consider what you are bringing forward. So we really appreciate that. I know it's the evening. I would still want to give you what remains of the evening, as well as preparing yourself for the next day. We really do appreciate from the side of the committee that you have agreed to come before us. That then takes us to the end in terms of your part, and we'll just leave the committee to then wrap up in terms of how we are approaching the next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to have come before you, and thank you for the insights shared in the process of questioning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll then allow you to leave the platform if you want the platform. Mr. Ngoma, I take it that for purposes of this evening, would have dealt with matters. You can use this opportunity to just find what then follows, and then we will formally.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that was the last candidate for today. The next interview is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And the link has already been shared in that regard. We have 10 more candidates to interview tomorrow. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, honorable members. As you would have heard from the announcement made, let's meet then tomorrow as we continue and conclude the process of interview tomorrow. The session then remains adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening.
I thought, Chair, you are saying thank you, Honorable Ngoma.
No, I've never said honorable.
No, let a note.
I'm just saying I've never said so. I don't want him to take a position. Make that mistake, Ngoma will run.
No, Chair. I'm happy with being. I'm happy with being missed. Okay. I'm happy with being missed.
Honorable Mazone, I've left you today, but I will engage you tomorrow, that you just make sure that there's no interference of the executive in the proceedings of the legislative committee. You've mentioned you being a minister of some sort, but we don't have ministers here. So this process may be contaminated. It may be like there's an influence of the executive, and there's no such. I can't see what is in the shadow, of course. I'm just speaking from a point of those that are in the light.
And she's the only shadow minister.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So let's just make sure it doesn't contaminate the work of a committee, that there was interference from the executive.
Chair, I think it's very well known to the whole country that I'm not in any which way, shape, or form. But I do understand, Chair. I will refrain if it will make your life easier. I am more than happy to comply with anything that makes our committee more easy.
Okay. Bye.
Good evening to everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.